Now this is a podcast all about Bears. You either cheering for this team or just pulling your hair. I like to take a minute, just sit right back and tell you how I became the #1 Bears fan.
That boy is Benny Hunter.
Cake on the mic, cake on the mic, cake on the mic, cake on the mic. People, this the intro. Sacramento, California, born and raised. And Antelope is where I spend most of my days. Talk bad about my team, you must be a clown. This is Keek on the mic, so you know you better bear down. Bear down.
Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. Before I get this episode started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms. Make sure you share this episode of Keek on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. So last night, the Bears dropped their fourth straight loss, losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers 29-27. And just like most Bears fans this morning, we're feeling a mixture of emotions because last night was the worst officiating game I have ever witnessed in my young life, watching football games. Tony Corrente and that team should never officiate another NFL game again. It was that bad. But on the bright side, we have an NFL quarterback, a franchise quarterback in Justin Fields, and he proved it on Monday Night Football on national television where the whole NFL world saw that the Bears finally got their signal caller right. And that's good news. And it's never fun to lose a football game, but like I said before the season and when Justin Fields entered the game, my main concern as a Bears fan right now is making sure that Justin Fields is progressing as an NFL quarterback, and in the last 2 weeks against pretty good defenses. At that, Justin Fields has showed composure. He is making the right throws. He's being decisive. He is getting better every single week, and as a Bears fan, that's all we should ask for. Before I get any further, I need to talk more about this whole reffing situation with Tony Corrente and his team, because like I mentioned, it was the worst officiating game in the NFL this season, and it was blatant that they were making all the calls for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kudos to the Steelers for winning the game, and I'm not the type of guy that likes to sit here and say that the refs determine football games, but last night it was clear that the Pittsburgh Steelers did not just beat us fair and square. They definitely had the refs' help. So let's go through it. First of all, they incorrectly called a low block that took 7 points off the board, and at the time, it would have made it 13-10 Steelers. Instead, we settled for a field goal. No roughing the passer on that same drive on Justin Fields, but the drive before that, they gave it to Ben Roethlisberger. Justin Fields even said after the game, in his press conference, he told the ref, Tony Corrente, said, "Hey, man, I just want it to be fair. You just gave it to Big Ben. Why can't I get that same call?" So that's 2. Number 3, Big Ben almost threw an interception. And the reason why our guy did not catch the ball, because it was clearly a face mask, and you clearly see it if you watch the replay. They didn't call it. Then a big play right after we scored, defensive pass interference on Jalen Johnson, where clearly it was Deontay Johnson that was interfering with Jalen Johnson. A lot of defensive offsides. One they called on Roquan Smith. He's clearly not offsides. And then the biggest play of the game, the biggest call of the game, is the taunting call on Cassius Marsh. That was not a taunting. You can clearly see Tony Corrente doing a little hip check to Marsh, and Marsh made it very clear in his press conference saying that if he ever did that to a ref, or if any NFL player did that to the ref, they would instantly be kicked out. So it was very self-evident that Tony Corrente had a very, very bad officiating game that night. And it was very clear by the way that he was calling the game. And it's just ruining the NFL at this point. And like I mentioned, I'm not the type of guy that likes to sit here and say it was the ref's fault, but it was clearly that these calls that they were making definitely changed the game and definitely helped the Pittsburgh Steelers win that football game. Obviously, the Bears took the late lead after Justin Fields marched down the field. And, of course, our defense gave up the yardage to Big Ben and the Steelers' offense that led to the field goal, the game-winning field goal. So that's not on the refs. But the plays before those big calls that took points away or allowed the Pittsburgh Steelers to get points was definitely on Tony Corrente and his team, and the NFL really needs to look into that to make sure it never happens again, because it's at this point, it's just ruining the NFL as a whole. But like I said, there was good things that came out of this game. Obviously, Justin Fields. We got a franchise quarterback, Bears fans, and I think he has proved it. Each week, he's getting better, and I am excited for the future. And at the end of the day, we know that playoffs are starting to get out of the window. We need to stop thinking about playoffs. At this point, we need to realize that as long as Justin Fields is progressing as a quarterback, it's a win for the Chicago Bears. So let's look at Justin Fields' stats here. 17 for 29, 291 yards, a passing touchdown, and an interception, followed up with 8 carries for 45 yards. So once again, making big plays with his legs, hitting Allen Robinson on a beautiful deep ball. Obviously, he had a nice one to Marquise Goodwin as well for 50 yards. He was making all the right reads all game, carrying the team on his back. He was the best player on the field all night long. And after all that, the Bears still only lost by 2, thanks to the refs helping out the Steelers. So there's positives in this game. Obviously, our defense is still giving up big chunk plays, but it does not help when you get called for taunting. That's not taunting, right? When you get called for pass interference, that's not pass interference. When you get called for a low block, that's not actually a low block. So when you take all those things away, the Bears only lost by 2 points. So there is wins in this game. Obviously, we didn't win the game, but us Bears fans should be very proud of the way that Justin Fields and quite frankly, how the offense played in this football game. That Pittsburgh Steelers defense is the number 1 defense in the NFL with TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Mika Fitzpatrick. Have a bunch of dogs on that defense. And the way that Justin Fields composed himself and led his team with a big drive to take the lead early in the late in the fourth quarter is a huge development for Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears as a whole. And just think, he's doing all this with Matt Nagy and this coaching staff. I can guarantee you guys this. Get rid of Matt Nagy, bring in a capable coach, and just watch how unstoppable Justin Fields will be. He is meant for this moment. The Bears finally got it right, and I am super excited to watch Justin Fields the rest of the year. Of course, we lost the game. It sucks. We dropped to 3-6. Now we go into the bye at 3-6. After the bye, we play a pretty good Baltimore Ravens team. Obviously, then we play on Thanksgiving against the Lions. And once again, 2 winnable games. But at the end of the day, as long as Justin Fields is developing the right way and going in a good path, I am content as a Chicago Bears fan. So I want to hear from you guys. How do you guys feel about last night's game? Let's talk about it. I know the refs were terrible, so let's talk about Tony Corrente and his officiating team, because I'm not going to be quiet about it. It was the worst officiating game I've ever seen, probably in NFL history in a long, long time. So comment down below. Let me know how you feel about this game. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms. And make sure you share this episode of Geek on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. And then now I'll be back for all new Bears podcast right here on Geek on the Mic. Thanks, guys. And like always, bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You can go and subscribe, cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic.